Now let's talk about some of the features and specifications of a virtual machine that you create using VMware Workstation. Now this is going to be a two-part video. In part one here I'm going to kind of get started and talk about some of the features and specs, but we're going to go basically hardware by hardware as we go through here. And there's some very interesting things you need to know about Workstation, and so we'll work through these. No doubt it's going to take more than one video to get all this in. So this is part one. Let's start off talking about the processor in a VMware Workstation virtual machine. Now Workstation's going to be concerned with logical processors, because when it begins to think about, okay, how am I going to virtualize processor functionality here, how many logical processors can I work with? Just one, two, whatever. So what's going to happen is it's going to provide one virtual processor on a host system with one or more logical processors. So what's happening here is VMware Workstation is going to basically treat the one real processor on the host machine. It's going to kind of split its personalities, if you will, and treat it as multiple logical processors within the virtual machine. Now, you can have up to 8 virtual processors on a host system that provides at least 2 logical processors. Now, if that makes sense, okay. If it don't, join the club. That's right off of VMware's declarations about features. So let's put it into English. Workstation is going to see 2 logical processors, and that's the way you want it to be. You want to see 2 logical processors. You want Workstation to access these. So under what conditions is it going to indeed see 2 logical processors? If the host system has 2 or more physical CPUs. These are kind of rare. In corporate environments you have them. In a lot of personal environments you're not going to have 2 or more physical CPUs. But look at this one. If the host system has a single processor multi-core CPU, Workstation will see and use 2 logical processors in the virtual machine. Now you just hit most of us. Most of us now have dual core processors, so there's only a single processor there, but multiple cores causes the operating system on the host system even to see that as dual processors, and that gives Workstation the ability to see 2 logical processors. Now, if the host system has a single processor with hyperthreading enabled, again, VM Workstation can treat that as 2 logical processors, because hyperthreading is going to allow you to switch back and forth between aspects of the CPU very quickly. Now let's talk about memory. The total memory for all your VMware Workstation machines on a single host is limited only by the host RAM. Now do keep in mind that with VMware Workstation you can't have more than 9 virtual machines running at one time. Okay, so that's going to be a limitation, but as far as memory goes, you're only limited by the host RAM. So each virtual machine can utilize up to 64 gigabytes of memory on a 64-bit host. That's pretty cool. So if I had 128 gigs on my machine, then theoretically, I could stick 50, 60 gigs on each machine there. You've always got to leave a little bit of memory out there for the host system, or you're going to cannibalize it. Now, each virtual machine, if you're in a 32-bit host environment, can use up to 8 gigabytes. Now, this is somewhat of a limiting factor, and you need to watch for this. Although, and it makes me feel really old to say this, 32-bit hosts are really kind of starting to go by the wayside now, especially in a corporate server environment. You almost don't see 32-bit hosts that much anymore, except the legacy ones. We're waiting on the wheels to come off of those. But in the kind of world where VMware Workstation is going to live, which is going to be on end-user desktop machines and laptops, you could still have this. So 8 gigs, it's a lot of memory, but we're starting to see situations and we're starting to see applications now where 8 gigabytes is really not enough memory. So just keep that in mind on 32-bit hosts. Also keep in mind, if you've got a 32-bit virtual machine and you assign it more than 8 gigabytes, Workstation won't even start that up, because it can get into problems with memory management and so forth. And so it'll just say, no thank you, I'm not going to do this. You're trying to run more memory than what I can efficiently manage and guarantee that's going to keep you out of trouble. We're starting here with the features and specs. Keep in mind, these are virtual machines created in VMware Workstation. So I'm going to stop right here. This will be the end of part one. Join me in part two, and we'll continue to talk about the features and specs that you can expect with a VMware Workstation virtual machine.